Good evening. So what do you want to talk about, I guess? I'm open to your questions. That's a good way to start, right? Because rather than me just go on, go ahead.
First question is, based on your talk from several months ago, do you feel we're any safer with the deportation that's been being done, with ISIS cells being in different locations around the country? Or do you think we still need to be on like a watch for this?
Well, it's only the beginning. I think that there's a lot of deep-rooted cartel members throughout the United States already in safe houses throughout the United States. It's not something that you just end right away.
Okay.
And so there is a movement with the federal government, first of all, to move some of the more important terrorists and criminals out of the United States. But there were millions that came across the border. And so that's not going to be done in 6 weeks or really 6 months. There's a lot of people who are embedded already throughout the United States, and that's not just from South America, that's from all over the world. And cartel is everywhere throughout the United States in neighborhoods that you wouldn't think about, with safe houses. So it will be a long process to do that. Do I think we're in a much better place we are today than we were in December of 24? Absolutely. I believe there's a new emphasis on attacking crime in the United States. I was in Washington, D.C. for the National Sheriff's Midwinter Conference, and Tom Homan was there and discussed some of the changes they're going to be making. And so they're important and needed changes today. Like one of the questions I was posed with was what's going on with Lake County and immigration. And so it's not an easy topic because I'll give you an example. As the Lake County Sheriff's Office, if we were to make a traffic stop and we pull over, there were over 800,000 to 900,000 well, they're not really detainers, but through immigration has placed on a number of individuals throughout the United States that they're looking for, that they want to deport for various reasons. And so under current law, if we were to make a traffic stop and ran that, and we had no warrants or anything with this individual, and we made a traffic stop and it said, well, immigration wants them, right now we would have to call immigration on the phone and say, we have somebody that you want right here at 306 and 84. Are you able to come get them right now? Because you have maybe 15 minutes to come get them. And if you don't, we got to let them go. And the reason for that is we have no legal authority to detain anyone for immigration. That's federal law. And so we're working with immigration. A lot of the sheriffs here in Ohio are doing it, and we have to get certifications. They're called 287 certifications. And so a number of our deputies would be certified to be agents for immigration.
Yes.
And so an extended arm of immigration. And by doing that, if they were on duty or could get there, we would be able to detain them, and they could take them to a facility that houses immigration to be held there. There are only 2 sheriff's offices currently in Ohio, Seneca County and Geauga County, that house immigration inmates. Now Butler County down near Cincinnati has talked about housing immigration inmates, and you hear Sheriff Jones, who's a friend of mine, He's always there with his big cowboy hat and bigger than life, talking about, and he has a sign, immigration, welcome here. And the reason why most sheriff's offices don't house immigration inmates is because of the restrictions. For instance, every year, for our citizens that we arrest, the state comes in and inspects once a year under what's called Ohio minimum jail standards. And they're the minimum jail standards we have to meet to house people in our jail. If we don't, we're cited and have to correct those. If you house immigration inmates, there are 4 inspections a year. And they bring in 5 inspectors instead of 1. And they spend an entire week in your facility combing everything through and adding more and more requirements.
Why?
Because of immigration requirements status that was set up previously under the previous administration. Now, my feeling is our jail should not require higher standards for people who aren't our citizens than for our own citizens. So I don't think we should be restricted and higher liabilities placed on us to get litigated, which then ends up costing our residents through insurance premiums to house immigration. Now, is there money to be made? Yeah. So if we were to house 100 immigration inmates a day for a year, that would be about $2 to $3 million of revenue coming into the county.
From where?
From the federal government, okay? We're looking, right now we house already United States Marshal inmates. And so inmates that are housed under the federal government, charges under the federal law, we house maybe 5. We used to house, back in the 90s, we housed 60 a day. And we housed 60 a day for Cuyahoga County because they were overcrowded. So we were housing about 120 inmates a day back in the early 90s when I was the jail administrator, and it was bringing in about $3.5 million a year. Now, that wasn't really true profit because we had to open the 5th floor, so that was 15 officers, so you had the cost for that, cost for meals, cost for all the supplies, medical. So it's not, but certainly of that $3.5 million, at least 2.7 million was revenue that went back to our general fund. What was that used for? When the jail was built and opened in 1990, the jail cost about $20 million to build, and $10 million over 30 years in interest. So $30 million. The county was able at that time to use that money to pay down that debt and really paid off the jail a lot faster. By about 2009, the jail was paid off. Today, by 2018, we had no room to house those individuals. First of all, in 1995, Cuyahoga County went into debt. And so in 1 week, they pulled all 60 inmates out and jammed them into the Cuyahoga County jail. So $1.5 million in revenue disappeared that quickly. We continued to house Marshal inmates, but when we had the old jail, when it opened up in 1990, we brought 100 Lake County court inmates under our court system, 9 females and the rest males, into our jail. Well, our jail had 353 beds. So there was extra room for these additional people. By 2018, we were housing 375 Lake County court inmates a day in a jail built for 353 inmates. These were all Lake County court inmates. And so there was no room to house Marshall inmates. And so that's why we were down to 5. And so the Marshals contracted with a prison in Conneaut, and that's where Marshall inmates go today. So I'm not sure how we got down that rabbit hole, but would we house immigration inmates today? Yes, if they change the inspection requirements. Now, one of the things we are certifying our jail is under another program under immigration, is that we will be certified if, is it Paula?
Yeah.
So if Paula's arrested for her 10th DUI, she's a serious drinker. No, so Paula's in our jail and she's done with her time, but immigration wants her. We're certifying our jail that if immigration says, yeah, we want her, we're gonna detain you for up to like 72 hours. It gives the immigration a lot more time to come get her. And so we are working with them. There's another program that we're not going to get involved, and that's being agents of immigration and going out into the community and looking for people. I don't think that's the role of the sheriff to do that. If there's a serious individual, say a cartel member, and immigration is out looking and said we need help, we'll be right there to help them. But we're not going to be an extended arm of immigration to spend our time looking for all those cases. I don't think that's what Lake County's looking for me as sheriff to do in the county.
Good idea.
Yes, ma'am.
So can you tell us how many immigration arrests you have had, and were they sent away or what happened to them?
No, I can't tell you that. No, to tell you the truth, haven't had many. Okay, we did have a gentleman last week who was wanted by immigration. I believe he was from Vietnam. He had a charge in Lake County. He bonded out from that. We called immigration and they came within an hour and picked him up, and he's under federal custody somewhere, but not in our jail. We have not had a lot of involvement with immigration, nor have we had a lot of requests from immigration here in Lake County.
Painesville, is it still a sanctuary city?
Painesville's never been a sanctuary city.
Oh, so
That's one of the biggest misnomers, is that Painesville is a sanctuary city. There is no city in Lake County that's a sanctuary city.
That's good to know.
Now, people make that up because at one time, Lake County was the nursery capital of the United States because of the soil, especially out where I live in Perry and out that way, lots of nurseries. And so we did have a lot of green card status of people coming to work the nurseries, and then they would go back home during the winter and then come back for the summer. Well, eventually that developed into staying here legally in our community, and a lot settled in the Painesville area. And so there's always been this picture that Painesville is a sanctuary city for illegals, but it is not.
Thank you for clarifying that.
That's not a problem. Yes, sir.
Is it true there was a Sinaloa drug cartel house in Painesville?
There was probably, I would say, 3 years ago now, and we weren't even aware of that, which I was sort of upset with the federal government over this, but they were looking at a cartel house that was roughly about 2-3 miles from the sheriff's office. And so they were tracking shipments from Mexico that were coming across the border, coming up, and then coming across Interstate 90, and it was a drop-off point, a house, and that was a transfer point. And so the DEA, the marshals, ATF, all were looking at this, and we were contacted at the last minute because they needed our SWAT team to raid that cartel house.
Cool.
When we raided it, there was information went out ahead of time, so when we hit the house in the middle of the night, there was still food on the table, guns at the doors, but they were gone from the upstairs residence, and they caught them on their way to Pennsylvania is when the truck was finally pulled over. Downstairs was a packing house, but as far as I know, there are no more cartel houses in the Painesville area. But there are plenty throughout Cleveland on that inner stops. Yes.
From the commissioners' meetings, I remember you talking about a big change in Lake County and the residents of the jails. A lot more women now, is that correct?
Well, if you go back to 1989, the old jail that used to be behind the court is where I started, and we housed 9 females at that time. So in 1990, when the current jail opened, we brought over 9 females. By 2018, we had 105 female inmates. Now, why is that? Well, there's been a change over the years in the courts in terms of holding more people accountable, and with some of the poverty that exists in our communities, a lot of those women involved in stealing that were brought to jail, and then the rise of drug addiction helped rise the female inmate population. Today we're at about 70 female inmates in the jail. Yeah.
What are the serious elements of threat that you're dealing with in the county, and how active are those threats?
Lots of guns moving through Lake County. And what I mean by that is a lot of people who use drugs and some who sell drugs are carrying guns in their cars. As well, people who are intoxicated with guns in their cars. People that are high with guns in their cars. And so we're encountering that more often. Doing traffic stops, finding handguns, finding people with drugs. We're seeing a lot more people today run from police. And I know on the West End, we always call it the West End as our border with Cuyahoga County. And a lot of crime moving in from Cuyahoga County into western Lake County. And there is an awareness that police aren't probably going to chase you at high speeds. And that's throughout the United States. When I was down in Arizona at the border and driving with the Cochise County Sheriff's Office, they said in how people come down to the border from Phoenix to pick up people crossing the border at the time. What they told them is go as fast. If you get up to 100 miles an hour, will stop chasing you. And so these were little kids, 14, 15, going down there with their cars. And of course they couldn't drive that fast, and they were wrecking and being killed, thinking they could run from the police. Well, that's happening here in our community. One of my sons is a captain at Willoughby Hills, and he was telling me, this was about a year ago, they busted some teenagers in a car. There were a 12-year-old, 2 14-year-olds, a 16-year-old, and an 18-year-old. And they came to Willoughby Hills to steal cars. The 16-year-old had his eye shot out 3 weeks earlier stealing cars in Cuyahoga County. But he went to jail in Cuyahoga County and was released same day. And so you're seeing some of this in terms of car thefts, is people coming here and they all pile into one car and then filter out through the neighborhoods to steal cars. So in Lake County, we've been trying to crack down on that. But you still have today drug addiction, you still have alcoholism and drunk driving. You have domestic violence, especially in youth here in Lake County. You know, beating up their parents, beating up their grandparents who they live with. And so domestic violence still exists. What has changed is, if you're driving under suspension back in the 90s, you were arrested and taken to jail for driving under suspension. Today, you're given a ticket and told to appear in court. And so there's also been a push in the Ohio courts to give, instead of cash bond to assure your appearance in jail, that you're just given a personal bond and promise to appear. And so a lot of that came out of the Ohio Supreme Court actions about 2 years ago. Well, that changed here recently when the more conservative court has come on. But that still exists a lot in some of our court systems. So it's a mix, the type of crime that is here. Do we still have murder and those things going on? Absolutely. Just Sunday, was it Sunday?
What are the trend lines?
One second. Sunday, Madison Township, road rage incident down Route 20 on, I think it was on Town Line Road, emptied out to the UH building there, and in the parking lot, the other guy, one of the guys shot the other guy 4 times over a road rage incident. So you see this happening still. So it's a mixture. Go ahead.
Sure. So I have 2 questions, if I could. So
Just one.
Okay. What are the trend lines in crime that you're seeing? And the other question is, now that Ohio is a constitutional carry state, if you have the concealed carry, does that need to be renewed or not? What would be your recommendation?
No, you don't, unless you want to carry across state lines. Then you need to get, to come to our CCW office or a CCW office and get a CCW license if you want to carry across state lines. But if you just want to carry here, but here's the problem. Nobody understands the laws. And so we're going to be starting a series that I'm going to be pushing out on our Shares app and on our Facebook from our CCW office, explaining you just can't carry a gun in your car and think everything's okay. Number one, you can't carry a loaded weapon and be intoxicated, have drugs in the car. But it's amazing how many people are out there doing it. Also, what are the requirements? Where can you store a gun? What can you do with a gun in your vehicle? What can you do on your person? Where can you carry it into? Can you carry it anywhere you want? Can you carry it into a school? You think people are aware of some of these laws, but they're not. So we're starting an effort to educate people, even though it's a constitutional carry state, you still have to have some understanding of what you can do with a weapon. Go ahead. Yeah, second question.
I'm sorry, the second question, what trend lines are you seeing with regard to different types of crime in Lake County?
You go through, it goes through ebbs and flows. And you tend to see less property crime during the winter months, because I guess criminals don't like to go out when it's cold. But you see a lot more during the summer. So we're going to see a lot more of that going on. We're seeing a lot, I guess, crime is a bad terminology for it. A lot more with mental illness. We just had our SWAT team out last night, there was a guy who had a gun to his head in the metro parks, and the metro parks butt up to housing areas, and so we needed to more contain him, because you never know what somebody's going to do, and if they're threatening to shoot, you don't want them filling out into a neighborhood. But you're seeing a lot more mental illness with people hurting themselves. The other night, our deputies responded to a guy who was stabbing himself in the throat with a knife because he got bad news on his sister. So you've seen a lot more seriously mentally ill people in some of those responses and trying to deal with that. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Two questions, but related. What are your trends so far in the last 3 months, 4 months, in the way of flow of illicit drugs and human trafficking? And do you see it improving with the crackdown at the border?
Well, it depends on where the courts go in terms of how they look at some of the crime. Human trafficking, and people don't like, I guess, saying this, human trafficking is involved a lot with prostitution. And we're getting more involved in human trafficking, but that's identifying more people in our own community that might be your neighbor that's contracting with these people to come to their house through various social media sites for prostitution. And then drugs are involved in that. And so it's trying to identify those areas and trying to do a better job of addressing those issues. And then if human trafficking is involved in that, getting help for those individuals. Not everybody who's in prostitution is necessarily there of their own free will. Yes?
And then have you started to see a slowing of influx of, methamphetamine, fentanyl, Adderall, some of the illicit drugs, not the prescription types of transportation through?
No, it's still very strong
Still
in
very
our
strong.
communities.
So we just haven't seen
Still
where
very
it's-
strong.
It's down, coming across the border, but it's still flowing across up this way.
There's many ways to get across the border. Illegals have cut down on the amount of traffic, people crossing the border, but the same traffic flow areas still exist in the southern border, and one that people don't really realize is the northern border through Maine, Connecticut, up through those areas, and coming down through New York are still very strong.
Thank you.
Yes?
A couple questions real quick. First one you mentioned a while back with regard to rules and regulations that hamper you, so that you said 4 times a year with the inspections. And
Yes.
Okay, so here's the first question. Has anyone taken the time to notify the property departments and the Trump administration?
Yes,
that
Tom
they know
Homan's
that-
already addressed that.
Oh,
And
good.
he told us in Washington DC, they're going to work to change those requirements.
All right.
But again, it's not been that very long that they've been in, so
I understand.
it is a longer
The
process.
second thing is this, you pull someone over and you say, well, I got 15 minutes, is it possible to just take the plate number down? They go when the 15 minutes is up and you track them down later because you got the plate number.
It all depends on whose car it is,
Yeah, right.
and
I mean, it could slow them.
we're getting better at tracking individuals, and one of the things that's Lake County has been very involved in our police departments is a system called Flock.
Yes.
And so, but Flock there's a cost to it, and so to get a Flock camera in your town is about $3,000 a year. So in our communities, we have 5 paid through by the townships. Mentor has, I think, 19 or more cameras in the city of Mentor. Willoughby has a significant, so we have quite a few cameras throughout all of Lake County. And how these cameras work is they don't look at the person driving the car. It takes the model of the car and takes a picture of the car. And then it searches for, are there warrants for that vehicle? Or, for instance, we just had a bank robbery, here's the car, show us all gray vans where they're moving throughout that area, and you can track them to eventually see where they're going through the county to identify that. That has done a lot to help us track some of the criminals in our area and apprehend them. Yes?
What has, I know it's early, but what is the effect of legalization of recreational marijuana had on arrests and crime in general?
I don't think we've seen a significant rise outside the norm, but marijuana is treated differently today than it was 20 years ago in terms of arrests and those types of things. But I can't say that we've had an increase in intoxicated drivers overnight. That doesn't mean they're not out there. It's just we haven't as much identified them in terms of being intoxicated.
Is traffic getting slower, I guess?
No, and it's getting faster, and it just seems to me, young girls are flying. And a young girl passed me on her way the other day. She was going quite fast, putting on her makeup and talking on her cell phone at the same time. And it's just, it's crazy to me. Even what people are doing, like if you're going out on Route 20, Madison Way, they're fixing the roads, but it used to be called Death Alley. And everybody sits in the left-hand lane. And so the oncoming cars are all in the left-hand lane. They're all racing each other at 50 to 60 miles an hour. And
45-mile per hour.
But that's not, it just takes a small mistake. Why you wouldn't sit in the right-hand lane to give yourself buffer from the oncoming traffic, but people aren't doing that today. Yes?
Could you explain the castle doctrine, to me? What protection do I have in my home?
You can shoot anybody in your own home that you feel, no, that's my wife would be mad.
Sheriff, if I may, we had Second Amendment gun. He just walked out the door. He was somebody who was talking to us about our rights and our guns last time, and we were all, I think, a little unsettled on how, if you do defend yourself in your home, what the process is after that. So that's what we're looking for. Can you be clear if someone intruder enters
Well, to
your home?
tell you the truth, I'm not going to try to be. I went to the Holiday Inn Express last night, but I'm still not an attorney. Your better choice on some of these issues would be to have Mr. Colson come in, our prosecutor, and have him talk on castle doctrine and those things. If somebody invades your home and you feel threatened, you have a right to defend yourself. But there's going to be legal implications. And that's it's not like, oh, okay, well, it's in your house, you're okay. They're going to look into it. There's going to be prosecution, and they will look into some of these things. Legally, what is the best recommendations to you? I think it should come from the prosecutor himself. Go ahead.
Any thoughts on the burner launcher?
On the what?
Burner launchers?
No, I don't have any on that.
What's the question?
Burner launcher.
What's
What
that?
is that? It's a weapon that you can shoot and it will stun somebody for like up to 45 minutes. Enough time you can get away or call law enforcement.
There's all sorts of things you can use. Tasers, pepper spray. Obviously, you want to be able to defend yourself. But I couldn't, again, best person to talk to on that is Mr. Colson. Yes, sir.
For 34 years, I had an hour commute on Route 90. And in that time, I think there have always been some crazy drivers, but it's far worse now than it's ever been. And also, what I would call average to above average drivers, even they are driving well above the posted limit. It's like everybody's doing that. How do we get that to change? Because at one time, people did try to do the limit.
Well, again, one of the problematic things is law enforcement being sued, chasing a speeder who then wrecks and kills other people, and they say, well, why were they being chased? Well, they were going too fast. Was it worth that other person's life? And a lot of civil suits on that. I just saw a California police officer was killed chasing a speeder through the community and split his car in two. Now to hit a post going that fast and split your car in two, you had to be going very fast. Is it worth the risk of those lives? But again, the negative to that is criminals run from you. And so it's trying to find the fine line. What some law enforcement are doing is using speed cameras and sending you a ticket. I don't believe in that. And here's why I think it's a money fundraiser. And I don't believe that's the job of law enforcement, to make money off of traffic. Now, we should make a traffic stop, but I don't believe that we should fund government by writing speeding tickets. That's just my own, that's why we're not doing it. Yes, ma'am.
God bless you. Am I correct in feeling that you can, when you have, if you know an IP address, you can, there's a way you can see where it's at. Is that true?
Yes,
okay.
And we're getting better and better at that.
Great. So, this is on the topic of child, people who target children for their sexual purposes, pornography or whatever that is. I don't know why that is.
Yes.
Trafficking, yeah, child trafficking. So, what are your strategies to protect our children from these predators, where finding their IP and then arresting them because now we know that this IP was involved in that, illegal website or whatever it is on the dark web or something?
Well, it is. It's very complicated, and IP addresses are hidden and masked, and it's just like I got a phone call from my own phone the other day. I was calling myself. Well, it was somebody calling to, sell me something. But they masked my own phone number to me.
Okay,
so I'll answer that. We are training our detectives in a specialized unit, and there's a number throughout the county that have ghosted websites that they go in and find these individuals and find the ones in our community and trying to identify them and then track them back and then do arrests through that.
You've seen increase in arrests for child predators?
We have, and but it's also difficult. Imagine the officer who has to look at that all day and what you go home with. And so that's also pretty brutal. And so you don't want somebody doing that for a long period of time. And so it's trying to manage that. But we are doing that, and it's a more technical. We just got one of our detectives, we've been waiting 5 years to get paid. They're going to go to the Celebrate program, which is in Georgia, is funded. It's very costly, but the federal government will pay for him, and he'll come back with all the equipment to download cell phones and to be able to track some of that. But it's a unique technology resource to be able to do that.
Do you have federal funding or support in any way to, as on a local level, to find these predators?
Yes, but it's very limited funding. And unfortunately, because Lake County does pretty well managing itself, we're never usually open to a lot of funding. As much as we try, we never seem to succeed in some of that funding, although we keep trying. Yes?
Yeah, a couple of areas. One question I have is, I see a lot of police officers in Painesville Township on Route 20. Are they being funded by the township?
Yes.
Okay. Second question I have is, we heard from our county coroner at the last GOP luncheon. Not the last one, but the one before that. One of the things that was surprising is he kind of was telling us about drug deaths, how many died from drugs. I don't know if you know the number this year or, for 24, I don't remember, he told us. But the biggest surprise was how many drug deaths were there in Lake County during President Reagan when they had Just Say No. We were all shocked to find that there's only 3 drug deaths in Lake County during President Reagan.
Life has changed so much since the 1980s. As a society, you also didn't have cell phones in the 1980s, nor did you have some of the outlets. So to go back and say what they were doing in the 1980s would necessarily work today, it doesn't translate.
I wasn't saying that it would work. I just was.
Doesn't translate.
It was just shocking that the low number in drug use was a high priority during the Reagan administration under Nancy Reagan, if you recall. The last thing I wanted to mention is watching some of these film where they cross the border in Texas and other places with their cars. It is amazing the drugs that are coming across just in cars, how they try to hide it and what they find.
Absolutely. We're doing, with some of the county funding for our deputies, we have some interdiction units that we're working with that use a canine and another deputy. And so you might see them on Route 2, you might see them on Route 20, you might see them on 84, some of the more major thoroughfares that move through our county to try to identify drugs and weapons coming through, going border to border through Lake County. So some of those individuals sitting there, you're like, why aren't they pulling people over? They're not there for speeding, they're looking for identifiers in some of the drug trade coming through the county. Yes, sir.
I was gonna say, can the police track the purchase of an internet router to find the IP address of a child predator?
What was the question?
Not really. And it's far more, some of the bigger crimes, and this is one of the things that I'm trying to get across to the county today, but that's a good question, is the predators on seniors. And it's not, it's identifying love matches where people think, this person's in love with me, but they want to come over here, so they send them money. It is not unusual. We've had so many different individuals who have lost between $100,000 and $500,000 to some of the internet crime. And even when we tell them the person you're talking to is stealing from you, they still won't believe you. And so, unfortunately, what I'm trying to get across to the communities is you have to talk to not only seniors, but to other people around you who just aren't aware of this. There was a girl, and she was 25 years old, had $25,000 in the bank, was very good with her money, but got in one of those schemes and lost all her money. And she was pretty well educated, so it's not like people are dumb or people are, listen, people are lonely, they're looking for someone to help them. And so it's identifying some of these crimes and getting that message out to the community. Yes, ma'am.
Do we have very much homeless people in Lake County? And what happens to them?
Yes. We do have a rising population of homelessness, of really mentally ill individuals. And what brings them to Lake County? Programming. If you build it, they will come. And so back in 1982, 81, I was in a monastery, and I was a Franciscan monk, and I was working the inner city in Washington, D.C., and running a night shelter. We were running a night shelter in Northwest Washington. And it was an old school building. Remember when the Air Florida jet crashed back in the 1980s in Washington, D.C.? And it was one of those nights. Actually, it was one of those, that very night, I was talking to 5 young men who were in, there would probably be about 350 to 400 people who would come into closed school to sleep at night because it was a very cold winter. And they were pretty young, and it was like 2 o'clock in the morning. I asked them, what's making you homeless? They said, we came here to be homeless. I said, from where? And they said, Iowa. In Iowa, nobody will give you any food. We come here, and we can sleep here at night during the winter. You go down here, there's breakfast for you. You walk across town, there's lunch. We go into Lafayette Park, and we can sit around there and have dinner, and then we come back here to sleep at night, and during the summer, we can sleep outside. So, where that translates to Lake County, there is a lot of churches that have food programs. There's a lot of shelters, and so people do come here because there are services for them. It doesn't make it right, but a lot of mentally ill people that live on the street here, and it's a very sad situation, really.
Are we hurting society by helping them too much?
Yeah.
Yes and no. The problem is mental illness is so significant in our communities today. Families at some point can't deal with it, or they have the inability to deal with it. And so there's not funding for mental health services, or it's limited funding unless you have insurance. And so when these people walk away from their homes, they're on the street. And for instance, if somebody comes to jail who is severely mentally ill, it used to be we would get them on mental health medications. But as soon as they would leave, it would be 6 weeks till they could connect up with programs. By that time, they'd fallen off their meds, and it would continue. We have worked a lot with Medicare to get people on programming so that they get those services immediately when they get out of jail. But I think we have to do whatever we can to help people who are mentally ill and try to provide services as best as we can, but it's a difficult situation.
Okay, 2 more questions. This one, and then one more. Go ahead.
We had a lady in Willoughby who lived on a bench in front of the store for like the whole summer or something. And then when the weather got bad, she was gone. But is there anything that the community can do for her while she's there? We don't know.
Well, sometimes, and they do. We have
She refuses help. Everybody's
a guy named OBJ that stays around our jail. And as long as he's on the sidewalk, there's not much we can do. But he refuses all sorts of services. Now, you can call Catholic Charities or Salvation Army, and some of those places do have programming. And it's not necessarily Catholic Charities itself, but places that they fund, like United Way and some of those places that you can find programming, but you have to look for it.
They have to want to accept it.
Yes. Yes.
They can be deemed mentally competent, then what do you do with them? Same scenario. If they go in, I've seen her wearing a wristband when she's been in the hospital and released, she goes back on the street. So if she's deemed mentally incompetent, who's going to take over? And she has no family, probably, I don't know. It's a big problem.
It's a huge problem. Yes.
What's the status on a new jail that's going on?
Well, the current jail, as I talked to, I think, the last time, I was there when the new jail opened, the new old jail opened in 1990.
State of the art, they said.
The problem, when that jail was built, number one, an architect designed it.
Oh, no, that's bad.
And then when the architect was done, he gave the plans to a builder and said, go build it. And the builder said, that doesn't work, or this doesn't work. Lots of problematic. At the same time, there was some cost cutting done by the building company, which was Voinovich Companies at the time, that ended up being sued by Jefferson County and going out of business because of poor designs. The jail facility itself has just become so, we're pumping in $500,000 a year to keep it afloat.
No flow drain.
So one of the things was, do you remodel the current jail to meet current standards? Well, that would be about $90 million, today's prices, to do that. But then you still have a jail that's significantly underbedded. So put on addition, that would cost $50 million. But what they don't take into account, if you put on that addition, you would need 15 officers to staff it. That would increase your payroll $40 million over the next 30 years, paying for benefits and all that and staffing. So now you're at about $200 million, and your remodel's going to last maybe 15 to 20 years. What do you do in 15 to 20 years with that investment? So the county made the decision to build a new facility across the street. And so that is currently, we're about a month ahead of schedule. If you go to downtown Painesville, look across the street, we're building a 504-bed jail that will have enough spacing moving forward. It's being designed to work with the current staff of the current jail. So we'll not increase staff, obviously that increased payroll. And so that jail, we've been talking about this for 15 years. So back in 2013, Mike Matus, who was the budget director, began to put money away for a new jail. COVID was bad for the United States. COVID was good for the new jail. And here's why I say that. The county got about $40-some million over 2 years through, I forget what's the terminology.
Right. ESRA funding.
What's that?
Is it ESRA funding?
No.
ARPA?
ARPA funding. ARPA funding. Under ARPA, you couldn't use the ARPA funds to pay for a new building. But you could use it to pay payroll. So the county took the ARPA funds, paid payroll, took the payroll funds it was going to use, and put the money towards the jail. Why that's good for Lake County, Lake County had $85 million to put down on the jail. Then they went to funding sources. So they had to fund $115 million. They got $60 million on a good rate in 30-year bonds. They also got $55 million on short-term bonds. Under the county's plan, as has been explained to me, the county's investments are bringing in 15% return for the next 5 years guaranteed. They're counting, 15 million. They're counting on 5 million for the general fund. They're taking the other money and they're going to pay down the short-term bonds over the next 5 years to leave the county with a $60 to $70 million debt payment for the next 25 years for the current jail. So they don't have to go for new tax revenue to pay for the jail. The current jail should open, will be completed in spring of 27 and moved in by summer of 27. And then the current jail will be torn down.
What's the life expectancy?
50 years. what's different about this is called a design build. So they take an architect and the builder and they work together on the plans. And so in the end, then the architect, the builder comes up with what's called GMP, Guaranteed Maximum Price. And they've given that, and it's $205 million. And if it's more than that, then the builder, Gilbane, would have to pay any overages on that. But they're confident in it because they've worked with the architect to guarantee that. Does that answer your question?
That was good. Are you really happy about this, I would imagine?
I'm very, very happy because it's going to expand our mental health services. It's going to, right now, if you go to your school, there's a nurse's office. That's what our medical department is in the current jail. And we have severe medical issues, severe mental health issues. This new jail will be designed to handle those types of issues and give better medical care and better mental health care. Because the majority of people that come to our jail come back to our community. And our goal is to return people back to society better than when they first came to our jail. And that means getting them on drug treatment through our drug and alcohol services, treating their mental health services, and getting them transitioned back into the community. And if they're staying off crime, if they're getting mental health treatment, it provides a safer community not only for our neighbors but for our children in the community.